Welcome to Lead the Way with Anna Gauker. Your guide, Anna Gauker, is on a quest of her own to find effective ways of creating change and inclusion in our communities. You have come to the right place if you believe in truth, justice, and coffee. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, this is Lead the Way, and I'm Anna Gauker. The guest for this episode is someone I'm very excited to bring into your life. We're changing it up, showing our reach outside Wisconsin, all the way to the East Coast. Arthur Aston and I met earlier this year in a Facebook group for podcasters. He's a man with many hats. He is executive director for Build Jake's Place, a nonprofit organization in New Jersey, which creates accessible play experiences for individuals of all abilities. In addition to that, he's founder and lead facilitator of OurView, which offers trainings and workshops that promote disability inclusion in workplaces and schools. Through the pandemic, OurView evolved and is now a podcast as well. He interviews people with disabilities, aiming to showcase a variety of experiences of what it's like to live and move in the world with a disability. He is delightful, and I loved hearing everything he so generously shared in this conversation. Here is Arthur Aston. Arthur, I really love that we have this chance to talk. I got to know you a little bit a couple of months ago, and I think you have so much to offer and share in your work and the way that you lead in what you believe. Can you start out by telling us a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up, and what memory stands out to you the most from your childhood?
Oh, wow, this is great. So I am Arthur Aston. I was born and raised and still currently live in the state of New Jersey. Um, Currently, I live in my own apartment that is probably a half hour from where I grew up. So I grew up in a very small town, which I loved so very much. And I was born into a family. My parents were married. They had a daughter, my older sister, before I was born. And I was born with spina bifida. So I had a hole in my back when I was born. And I'm the only one in my family with this diagnosis for as far generations as we can look into. No one else has this diagnosis. So I have to walk with leg braces and crutches. And I also use a wheelchair at times. And growing up in a small town, I have so many memories. And I think one that really stands out to me, actually, I'll mention two. The one thing that stands out to me is going to a very small elementary school and everybody really knowing who I was and seeing my disability, but also embracing it. For the most part, everybody tried to understand and get to know me beyond my disability, even at such young age of being in elementary school from kindergarten through sixth grade. I think our school had maybe a total of 120 kids in it total. So if that many. So having that small group of literal community that I lived in, I think is a big a memory that I always hold on to. And now being an adult, having the great use of social media and staying in contact with some of those people and some of my teachers from elementary school is really really great to have now in current time. But another memory that stands out to me is we had a 9 foot in-ground pool in my backyard, and my dad teaching me how to swim. So although a lot of people, myself included, I told you when we first started, it was supposed to be very hot today. Although I don't appreciate the heat and just sitting out in the heat, I still do enjoy swimming. So that's a memory that I carry from childhood to today.
I also grew up with a severe physical disability, and I remember when I was little, the kids were so like curious about me and how everything works in my wheelchair, and they would like get so excited to see me and ask me tons of questions. And I noticed as I got older and kids got into middle school and became teenagers, they would often be more distant and in their own little world of what's going on with them, and less aware that I was even in the room. But you strike me as a real extrovert. Do you feel like that has helped you kind of navigate those experiences?
It's so funny to me that you say I strike you as an extrovert because I'm really not.
Oh,
I'm really not. I have uh, I think hosting my own podcast over the last year, and also the job that I have puts me in front of people a lot to do presentations and things like that. So I have an extrovert side to me that can come out when needed, when necessary. But in my personal life, I am the I can sit in a room for hours and not say a word. I can of course hold a conversation with someone, but if unless if I'm spoken to, I can sit in silence and be totally okay. And but yeah, my personality and the extrovert side does definitely helps, and I think it really helps with for those times when I am questioned about my disability and what, the what happened question. And that comes from children and adults. Most of the time, it is children, but sometimes I do have adults that see me out in the stores now, and they're just like, "Oh wow, like you're really good at getting around and managing, holding that basket when you're grocery shopping, and what is your disability?" So I think that the extrovert that lives somewhere inside of me, I think, is able to uh, come up and show out when necessary, and it does help for sure. But it's so funny that a lot of people have said that to me recently, and I'm actually a very quiet person in life.
was it a challenge for you when you started giving presentations and being more up in front of people and more open and um, kind of required to be in the public eye more? Was that a challenge for you, or did it just kind of come naturally once you were in the moment?
For me, I think more internally it presented a challenge for me, but when I get on stage, as they say, it doesn't show. So that I think that's the good thing. But inside, I think as a lot of people may do, I'm in my head a lot like, okay, what am I saying? How am I saying it? What's my tone and my energy level? Just having that whole internal conversation, I think, is still, I think, and it always will be a challenge, but it doesn't show. So I think that's the good part.
What's the internal conversation like for you?
It's a being mindful of my pace and my the clarity in which I say things. Sometimes I mumble my words and things like that. So I just speaking at the right pace to make sure that everything that I say is clear, and also making sure that the things that I say make sense. Because it's like I know the information I'm talking about if I'm talking about myself or the job that I have, and but just making sure that it can translate and make sense to the audience that I'm presenting to, because uh, I might be presenting to children, I might be presenting to adults, uh, different groups that have some knowledge about disabilities and other groups that have little to no knowledge about disabilities. So just making sure that the information is being presented in a way that everybody in the room, whether regardless of their level of knowledge about the topic, making sure that they can understand it is what I pretty much try to process and keep going over in my head and making sure it makes sense.
And these presentations would be for your organization, OurView for Life. Would you tell us a bit about how you came to develop this organization and what it is on a mission to do?
Yes. So I started OurView, OurView, in 2010. So it's crazy to believe that was 11 years ago next month in June. I started this company with three goals in mind: to raise awareness, educate, and change the tone of conversation about disabilities. I want to make sure that people know that people with disabilities are out here. They're living life. They're in your communities. They're your neighbors. They shop in your grocery stores, go to your malls. They will sit next to you at concerts and theater events. And I just want people, the larger audience, the world audience, to know that we like to do things. Although we have some challenges in life and we have to use wheelchairs and we have other medical needs and conditions that have to be attended to, uh, we still like to be active and go out and mingle and develop friendships and relationships. And I want to change the tone of conversation from being negative, that to get away from disability and disabled, from being a negative word, and move it into a more positive word. That, you know, when you see someone with a disability, you don't say, oh, that's so sad, and oh, well, that's a shame. But look at it as saying like, oh, wow, that person is out and they're driving a car, or they're out going for a walk or a wheel in their wheelchair with a group of friends, and they're out they're out eating at restaurants and things like that. So I want to change that whole tone from a negative to move it into a more positive space about disabilities in general. And I started the organization in 2010 pretty much off of two different conversations. One conversation was with my nephew, who was 9 at the time. He did not realize, or I didn't realize, I should say, that students at his school were staring at me when I was picking him up one day after school. He noticed it and he was very upset by it. So he and I had a conversation on the way home, and he said, well, they were laughing at you and they were pointing at you and staring, and that's just not right. And I can't wait to see them tomorrow and tell them. I said, well, no, what you're going to tell them is who I was and why I had to use a wheelchair, and that I have crutches and that I can walk a little bit. But tell them all the things that we do together. Tell them that I drive a car. Tell them that we travel and all of that. So, and after that conversation, my friend and I had taken a train to a concert, and we realized how inaccessible the train ride was and how inaccessible the stadium was, where they did some things right, but things could be designed better to better accommodate people, wheelchair users, and other disabilities as well. So between those two conversations of thinking of how to educate students and also how to make things more inclusive and accessible for those with disabilities, I said I have to do something. I don't know what it is, but I have to do something. And my friend, it's so funny. This was 11 years ago. I've known her since we were teenagers in high school, and I just saw her 2 nights ago. So we are still really good friends. She said to me, "Yeah, people have to see things from your point of view." And I said, "Yeah, you're right." And she said, "Yeah, from our view of people who have disabilities." And she goes, "That's your name. That's what you're doing."
There
That's what
you
you're
go.
doing. So yeah, we came up with the name OurView, and the logo is unique in that the O is also doubles as a wheelchair user. So while the name by itself may not be catchy, when you see the logo, you will automatically recognize that the O is a wheelchair user. So yeah, that's the short or very long story of how OurView came to be, and we're still going strong 11 years later. And it's really part of what I feel like I'm definitely here to do in life, and just make the change in my own community and my state and beyond.
It's so important that you're having these conversations and getting the ball rolling, so to speak. A lot of my career, well, really all of it, has been in the employment sphere, helping people with disabilities pursue their employment goals. And I have found that interacting with employers and developing interest in setting up interviews for clients, you're right, it's a real challenge to address that negative persona around disability and reframing it as a positive. And a lot of times, I've really started to use the term diverse abilities. It's a thing I'm trying to push. I really don't know how to get that out there more and more popular. I don't think it's the only thing that should be used, but I just think that it does help people understand the real situation, which is people have such a wide variety of skills and assets, and sometimes having a disability can give someone a unique vantage point or skill, and that's hard for other people who don't have personal experiences with living with a disability to understand. And there's such a push for diversity, but I've noticed that disability is rarely included in conversations about diversity. How do you think we should be changing that?
I love what you said about diverse ability, because everybody has their own set of skills, their own
Yeah,
sets of abilities, whether you have a physical, visible, or invisible disability, or you don't have any disability at all. Every single person on the face of the earth has some type of skill set, some type of skill level to do something. And one thing I've heard a lot recently is the terms excuse me, the term special needs. So my needs are not special. I just have needs that everybody else has. And, I want to be seen as a human being, and, regardless of my disability diagnosis. And I want people to recognize and acknowledge me for who I am as a person. Yes, I am a person of color. And yes, I have a disability. And beyond that, and in addition to those two things, I also do a lot of things. I have a great skill set in writing, and all kinds of different things. So I think we all, again, as you mentioned, disability is not often talked about as part of being diversity. And I think that is such a shame. It's very sad, that I think it also goes back to what we were discussing of the word disability and disabled having such a negative connotation to it, in that they see someone like myself or yourself, and they say, oh, they can't walk, oh, they're in a wheelchair. They focus on what we can't do, what we're not able to do, instead of saying, like, hey, well, what do you like to do? What are you able to do? And I think that is a valid question to ask anybody.
Right.
Because, you may tap into something that, although that specific job may not be for them, you may find, like, oh, well, they might work in this other department. They might be able to find a position to fill in this other area here, or I know someone who's looking for someone with that specific skill set. So I think it's just the matter is, for me, I find that instead of grouping everyone with a disability in the same group of, oh, they can't do this, they can't do that, have conversations with people, individuals. And even in the job seeking process, jobs were very difficult for me to find. And definitely my disability played a role in that. But finding out what I'm capable of doing, and what the person is capable of doing, and their skill set and their level of ability, I think is so key in any candidate, speaking specifically for jobs, whether they have a disability or not. I think that's truly something that's so important, is to get to know the individual and what what they're interested in, what they're capable of doing for themselves, and not just because, oh, someone who has spina bifida and they can't do this and that, so you possibly couldn't do it as well. I think that's a really big thing to mention.
You said that you're really on this earth to move forward the mission of our view for life. I think that's such a profound discovery to make. And at 35, I feel like I'm finally on the cusp of figuring out why I'm here and what I'm supposed to be doing. But some days, I was just thinking the other day, like, if I go at this current pace of self discovery and figuring out who I am and how I fit into this world, I think I'll be there in about 200 years. So we're getting there.
Yes.
But what has the journey been like for you in figuring out your strengths and understanding your own limitations and figuring out how you fit into the world?
How has the journey been? The journey has been rough, for sure. It has not been all easy by any means. Um, I think for me, it hasn't been easy, and at the same time, it hasn't always been difficult. I've had a lot of fun trying to figure out where I fit in and how I will do my part in the world. My original plan after college, I graduated with degrees in psychology. My original plan was to be a counselor for people and families who are impacted by disabilities. So I always knew that my mission would um, find itself with being involved with the disability community and helping others who are like me. Not because, or I should say, not only because I have a disability, so I can relate to some of the specific things that impact those who have disabilities. But I think that would, I think I felt and I always believed that always played a role in my decision of what I wanted to do in life. Because I do have a disability, I can relate to others who have different types of disabilities, and we can relate on a different level than someone else who may not have a disability. But we, I think in life, my family, we as a family always were encouraging of each other, with my parents and my sister, and even my extended family. And it was a thing of, you can do whatever you want to do in life, you can be whatever you want to be in life. And for me, it was always made clear that you may have to do things differently. Your path might not be as straight as someone else's, where they don't have the challenges that you have to reach certain goals. But you can still do it. You may have to go around to the right a little bit or to the left a little bit and do a zigzag path, but you can get there. So I've always known that I wanted to work in the area of assisting those within the disability community, and then also just raising awareness about disabilities. Because as I got older, I will be 40 years old this year. As I got older, I noticed that while I'm out with my family or out with my friends somewhere, I don't see many other wheelchair users at concerts, at Broadway shows,
Yep.
or at amusement parks, or insert insert in the blank, walking around New York City or in Philadelphia, where I'm very close to both cities. I don't see many people with disabilities, with physical disabilities and with visible disabilities, looking like me at these specific places and cities and towns and events. So to me, that said that something is keeping us as people with disabilities, something is keeping us from doing these things. And what is it? So I figured out, to me, one of the big things is that things are still not accessible for us. So how can I change that? And to me, you have to have a conversation with people. You have to talk. You have to tell and show people the error of the way that things are, that things, yeah, this is great, but it could be better. And you can increase, you can increase the accessibility of certain places and make it easier for people with disabilities. So maybe that we can come out more and participate in these activities a little bit more. So again, the journey has not been easy. It has not always been a straight path. Sometimes it was uphill and again, zigzagged, but it has always been a journey and an adventure, which I am very, very proud of, because as I said, I'll be 40 years old in a couple of months. So it's I'm still discovering like OurView, and raising awareness and educating about disabilities, I think, is part of my mission. I don't think that's all of my mission. So like you said, maybe I'll get there in 200 years when I figure all of it out. But I feel like I'm definitely on my way to discovering what my purpose is here in life.
I think that you're absolutely correct in just being out there and doing the things that you love to do, going to concerts, going to restaurants, being out in the world with other people. That's probably the most important thing, and people might think that's a small way of making a change, but it's just the reality that if we as people with disabilities are not visible to our communities, then how is anyone supposed to know that we're here and that we have a presence, and we are in the mix of what's going on and need to be considered in all types of decisions. I was chatting with someone the other day who said how important it is just to be out and show her struggle, like to get into certain buildings that aren't very accessible, and for people to see that it's not super easy sometimes, and to be okay with asking for help or help to get into the doorway or whatever. And I was just feeling like that's such a brave and simple approach, because I hate for people to see me struggling. I really like to be somewhere, at the dinner party ahead of time, already have my spot set up. I don't have to interrupt or disrupt the situation and have people get up and move out of the way. Ugh, that's so stressful and I hate it. So I hate being late to places, but I really admire what this person was saying to me, because it's just huge for people to be able to witness us, people with disabilities in the community, because perhaps the average individual thinks, yeah, like we don't really have any problems with accessibility. Like I've never seen anyone in a wheelchair actually in the last 5 years, so I think they're fine. Everything's great.
Right.
And how would anyone know it's not great if we're just hiding in our homes afraid of being uncomfortable?
Right. It's your story about the arriving early to a dinner party that uh really made me smile and laugh, because on Sunday, what is today? Wednesday. We're recording on a Wednesday. So this past Sunday, I attended a brunch, an outdoor brunch for a cousin's birthday party. And I knew it would be outside. So I took my wheelchair. I walk for short distances with my crutches, but my wheelchair is much more comfortable to sit in than the average chair. So I took my wheelchair, and they had a long table set up. So they had to actually move 2 chairs for my wheelchair to fit. And I said, "Oh no." I said, "Well, I can sit at the head of the table." And my cousin looked at me and said, "No, you can sit there because that's where you want to sit. And we'll just move. They'll squeeze somebody in on the other side and we'll sit a chair at the head of the table. But the other people, when they come, they can sit. That we'll figure it out. Like, don't worry about it." And I said, "I know, and I've known these people my whole life. Like they're my family." And I still freaked out about it. Like, "No, you have to move 2 chairs." Like, "Oh my gosh, no." Like, "I'll sit over here. I'll sit at this other table." "No, that's where you want to sit. You sit there and we'll figure out where everybody else is sitting. Like, that's not for you to be worried about."
Yeah,
I
it's
said, "Oh, okay."
I'm so sorry that I exist. Oh, I
Yeah.
don't want
Yeah. And
anyone to be
it's
disturbed.
right. And it's so funny you said that, because I said I did that. Like, I did it with my own family 3 days ago. Like, that's so crazy that and I had to just think about that. Like, I really did it. And my cousin just looked at me and she said, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, it's throwing everything off and you have this table set up." She's, "Oh, we'll figure it out. It's not a big deal." I said, "Okay." Like, "I can go get my crutches and I'll sit in the chair." Like, "No, you won't. You're comfortable in your wheelchair. That's where you'll sit." I said,
And
"Okay, all right."
thankfully that your cousin knows you well enough to
Right.
know, no, you won't be comfortable in a different chair. You're not going to enjoy this day if you just kind of say, oh, it's okay. I'll do what's best for everybody else. And that's not what she would want for you, is to be uncomfortable and sitting in pain for the whole fun
Right.
celebration.
Exactly. And I think it just proves even what you said and what the story I just told, it shows how, we are somehow, I don't know why it is, but still concerned about like how other people will fit
Yeah.
in. It's not about me. Like, no, how's everybody else going to sit at this table if I'm here? And so it's being concerned about other people when it's like it's okay to think about yourself for a little bit and
Right.
and let everybody
People,
else work around you.
yeah, people
Hmm.
will manage.
Right.
It's fine. And
Right.
you definitely have been doing a great job of finding your way. You are executive director of Bill Jake's Place, a nonprofit that creates accessible play experiences for individuals of all abilities. And that's separate from the organization that you founded. So you have all types of experiences in the nonprofit sector. I'm involved with starting a nonprofit right now. Do you have advice for me?
I would just say I didn't start Jake's Place, but being involved with them as executive director for the last 8 years. In October, it'll be 8 years that I've served as their executive director. Um, but I've been involved with them, started off as a volunteer in 2010 as well. Uh, the best advice is to just really, and it might sound very common, but to just stick with it. It can get difficult. I know for us building playgrounds with Jake's Place, the grant money and funding for that has been difficult to find at times, but sticking with it, and you will definitely find, as we did, you'll find your community and you'll find your supporters, and it's it's really again best one of the best things that has happened in my life is being connected with the Jake's Place organization, and the work that they're doing to create inclusive play spaces. Because growing up as a kid, I didn't have an inclusive playground that had rubberized surfacing, so I could not worry about tripping and falling in the mulch or the gravel when I was walking with my crutches, or if I was wheeling my wheelchair, being able to actually get onto a playground while I was still in my wheelchair. Uh, as a child, that was impossible. There wasn't one that existed, at least not anywhere near my hometown or my state. Um, back at the time, you're talking 30 years ago, I would have been 10. So to be involved with Jake's Place and any nonprofit, I think the work is can be difficult, can be challenging, as I said, to find the funding and the resources you need for the work that you want to do. But it's out there, and just keep at it, and keep pushing towards what you want to achieve. And I think it's all going to show up for you, and it's all going to be rewarding for you, and reaching your mission, achieving your mission and your goals in that organization.
Is there anything that you wish you knew when you started Our View for Life?
I Wow, that's a good one. Is there anything I wish I knew? I think I wish I knew uh my presentations for Our View really focus on schools, and I really wish I knew more about um, how the schools work, how the districts work, and just getting into schools has been uh, challenging at times. But again, once I was into the schools, there was one school that before 2020 I was going to every year to do a presentation for 6 years. So building relationships, I think I wish I knew that part of it first, because I was able to get into a lot of schools because my friends were teachers there. And then I think building relationships within the school district itself, because if my friend is at one high school, the district might have an elementary school and a middle school. So I could potentially have the opportunity to speak in all of the schools within the one district. To once building those relationships within that the education community. So I think that's something that has benefited me in more recent years, and not so much when I first started, because I was honestly, I was thinking too narrow-mindedly about it. That, I would just speak to my friend's class, and that would be, that would be it. Missing out on, potentially hundreds of other students within the district.
Right. And
Yeah.
you most recently have started a podcast through your organization called OurView Podcast. Can you tell me a bit about that? What's your favorite part of doing the podcast?
The podcast came out of the pandemic. And before 2020, I was, as I mentioned, going to schools and speaking to students in person, and going to companies as well as part of the OurView program to raise awareness within businesses and help them with accessibility and things like that. But I wanted to keep my message out there. And with the sudden shift that schools made to the virtual online learning, I didn't want to overwhelm any schools with like, oh, hey, I have this program. I can also do a virtual program for your students too, because I know how, again, I have friends who are teachers. So I knew how overwhelming it was for them to, number one, raise their own kids who are now virtually learning, and then also teaching their courses, their own teaching classrooms that were now virtual. So I didn't want to overwhelm them with that, but I also, again, wanted to keep my message going and continue to raise awareness, educate, and change the tone of conversation about disabilities. So I have a pretty decent microphone, and I have a set of headphones, and a computer with a camera on it. And I said, okay, let's try to create a podcast. Um, I didn't know what that would be at the time when I had the idea, probably in April of 2020. But I chose to go with the interview style. The first episode that I put out is about me, where I tell my story and how I created OurView and my life's journey of getting to adulthood with living with a disability. But other than that, I focus on interviewing other people who have disabilities. Recently in 2020, I started a Mental Health Monday series, where on the first Monday of every month, I put out an episode that is a specific topic related to mental health. And I'm also moving into different topics where I had a sexologist as a guest one time. I had a family therapist and people that help with. I had someone on just this week, an episode that came out with, her name is Annie Tremmel, where she helps where a sibling might have a disability, but then other siblings don't. So creating good relationships amongst siblings where one has a disability and other siblings don't. So I'm just addressing all topics related to disability. And I'm going to get into financial savings and housing and all types of different topics where the podcast can be a resource as well for people with disabilities. And again, how to save money when you're receiving a disability check, an SSI or SSDI check, and ABLE accounts, or how you can rent or own a home as a person with a disability who, who typically you can't have more than $2,000 in your bank account if you're receiving the disability checks given out by the government. So there are ways to legally do these things. And just to provide a space where you can hear other stories of those who live with disabilities, and then again, um, provide resources for those who people who might be going to college and finding out about the disability services that are available on their campuses at college, just to provide all types of ways for people with disabilities to live productive and successful lives where they can, again, potentially save some money, own a home, rent a home, and just live their best lives. I think that is the best way to summarize what the OurView podcast is.
Wow. I mean, I still have a couple more questions, but
Yes.
thank you for being you and doing what you're doing with this podcast, because there are a lot of resources and services out there, but there's really not much out there that is an open conversation, letting people know that the future is possible if you have a disability. A lot of the resources that are available, you have to know about it and you have to ask around about it, and you really have to dig to find out information. So to have your podcast just available where podcasts are available, and for people to get a stream of information and just hear about other people's experiences, I think it gives people hope, because there's it's just hard to always be actively digging for information. You know what I mean?
Yes, I was just going to say, I know for me as a child and even as an adult as well, what you just said is so true. Things are out there. Resources are out there. There are plenty of things out there for people with disabilities. They are just so difficult to find sometimes.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to find it, it can seem like, oh, okay, well, it doesn't exist. Perfect example is me. I'm able to drive a car with the use of hand controls. I never would have thought that as a young person, because I know a typical car works with foot pedals. I know my feet don't move in the up down position it would take for someone to drive a car with the pedals, the brake pedal and the gas pedal. But, trying to find a driving school when I was 17 and 18 years old was so difficult. There was a driving school 15 minutes from my house, but I had to drive almost 45 minutes from my house to find one that had hand controls. So, hoping that now, 20 years later, hoping that it has gotten better. I don't know, but that's also, something that I do want to address on the podcast as well. Just, those types of simple pleasures in life of being able to drive a car, that it is possible with certain disabilities, you are able to drive a car. Uh, but just letting people know that it exists and that it is a possibility, I think is, again, can be difficult to find and to locate that information. So again, just doing my little part in trying to make things a little easier for families who are impacted by disabilities.
I would bet you money that it hasn't changed, but
I agree.
I hope I'm wrong about that.
I agree.
What do you wish people asked you more?
Oh, that's a good one. What do I wish that people asked me more? Hmm. I could go two ways with this one. I would say in relation to my disability, I would say I wish that people asked. I just wish people asked, like, what is your disability, and not just stared or looked at me.
Or pretend
I
it's
just
not there?
Yes, right. I just wish people would ask about it more, because even though I've mentioned this story before, I don't know if I've said it to you, but when I go out, I am usually the only person I see in a wheelchair. If I go to the grocery store, to the, your Target or Walmart or whatever, I'm usually the only person I see in the store with a wheelchair that's a wheelchair user. So I know how it can look. Um, I won't say strange. It'll look different to people because, oh wait, there's a guy in a wheelchair that's food shopping. Yes, I have to eat. And yes, I appreciate the delivery services, and I utilize them sometimes. And sometimes family members will go to the store and pick up a few things for me, because some things are just difficult for me to carry, like carrying milk or eggs or something like that. It's or juice. It's hard for me to carry. So they will pick up things for me, but I like to go out and get my own food sometimes at the grocery stores. But that can look different to people because they don't see anyone else in the store that's a wheelchair user. So instead of just staring at me, just start a conversation with me. And I know 2020 has been interesting and different for people, so it's a little more awkward to start conversations with people now. But before then and now going forward, as things are thankfully getting better with this COVID-19, it's just ask questions and just start conversations, I think I would say. um yeah, so I think that's what I wish people would ask me more. And then the other side of it I was thinking of is I really like tequila. So I wish people would ask me like what's my favorite tequila, although I don't have one, but I could start a conversation about that.
How would anyone know to ask you that? Do you have
I don't
lots of
know.
tequila t-shirts or something?
I don't. I don't. But I just, like people say like what is your favorite food? Ask me what is your favorite drink or something like that. I don't,
Uh,
you know.
yeah, that's a good one. It's a good opener,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yes.
What does the future look like for our view, the organization and the podcast?
The future, as they say, the future looks bright. I'm so excited for the future. Um, I have so many great things planned. I am uh, and speaking of my podcast, I didn't say this earlier, but thank you for being a guest on my podcast earlier this year. It was a great conversation, and my mom was very excited that I was going to be on your podcast. I talked to her
Oh,
this morning and told her. She said, "Oh yeah, yeah, I loved her. I loved her episode on your podcast." But so the future for Our View, the podcast, I'll start with that, and I'll say it looks very bright. Again, I have episodes coming out every week until the end of July, and then I'm taking off. I'm not putting out any new episodes in August, but in September I'm starting the which would be the third season. I'm starting in September with the resources that I discussed with you about housing and disability services on college campuses, finances, and just all of those other types of resources is what I'm going to primarily focus on in the third season, in addition to interviewing, again, people that have disabilities and keeping up with the mental health Mondays as well. And just, looking forward to sharing people's stories and helping those who live with disabilities, and just, again, just growing that network for other people who are in similar situations to what I was in, being either a child, a teenager, young adult going to college, or just someone starting out on their own, moving out of their home for the first time, and just offering them resources and connections that I wish I was made aware of sooner. I think that's what I'm looking forward to with the OurView podcast. As far as the company, I think um, again, my biggest thing with that is just raising awareness and changing the tone of conversation. It has gotten a lot better. And I think for me, the biggest part that I love about the OurView company that I do when I was doing the presentations, I'm looking forward to number one, being back either in person or virtually with the students, just to do those presentations again. Again, it's whatever works best for the school districts is what I'm willing to do. If it's a virtual thing, just to have the connection so they can see and hear my story, my voice straight from me. I think that's what I've missed the most about this. But what I also missed is I do a lot of small presentations within the classroom. So you have 20 to 25 or 30 students in a classroom, maybe. The way that the students open up with each other and start talking about their own disabilities. I've had students that come out and say, oh, I'm autistic, I have autism, or oh, I have dyslexia. That's why that's why I can't read that well. Or I get confused when I read, or I have a stutter. That's why I don't like to read. And the students and the teachers have no idea, or, they're very surprised that they talked about it out loud in front of everybody. I'm looking forward to that and just creating a more kind and a more accepting classroom setting, I think, because one thing I like to do in the start of my presentations is I ask the students questions of, if they're middle school kids, maybe I would say 10 to 13 years old, I'll ask them questions like, who likes to play video games? Who likes pizza? Who likes to do this? And I'll say different things, and they'll all raise their hands on similar things. And then I'll point out, oh, did you see that you and the guy over here in the red shirt, you both like video games? Did you know that about each other? Or did you know that you and the girl in the blue dress over there like to go to the beach in the summer, or you two like to swim? So it creates the different connections that, although the students look different than each other, and I mean, whether it be gender, race, religion, or disability, they look different than each other, but they like doing the same things. So it proves the point that we are more similar than we are different in most cases. And I think I look forward to doing that again with my presentations, and I'm really excited for what that again, what that kindness and acceptance brings to that classroom and the classroom setting, which I've had teachers reach out to me months and years later and say, those two kids that you pointed out that like to do these two things, they're like really best friends now. So it's it's
Wow.
really rewarding. Yeah, it's really rewarding in that way. So I'm looking forward to that, and I think that's what I'm most excited about.
Well, again, Arthur, thank you for being you, and thank you for sharing your perspective with us. You're doing such great work. I'm so glad we had another chance to talk, and I look forward to many, many more.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I love that we were able to connect. And again, thank you again for being on my podcast. I really, I told you before, but I really enjoyed your book. And, I'm really happy to have this conversation with you. So thank you for having me as a guest on your podcast.
Thank you so much to Arthur Aston. He is amazing and wonderful, and I can't say enough good things about him. Be sure to check out OurView podcast, and you can find information about their other programs on OurView.com. All episodes of Lead the Way can be found on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. And make sure to rate and review when you subscribe on Apple. Special thanks to Buzz Kemper for his voiceover artistry in the opening. This episode was brought to you by the time and talent of Tyler Willenbrink. I'm Anna Gauker. Until next time.